Over the centuries, submerged cities were hidden by natural tragedies such as earthquakes and seaquakes, or even because of human decisions. However, some of these cities have been found and are no longer a mystery, revealing monuments, artifacts, and even treasures. In this video, we're going to get to know some of the most fascinating underwater cities in the world, so follow us, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave your like. Baia. Over 2,000 years ago, Baia was the Las Vegas of the Roman Empire. Baia was an ancient thriving spa town for the rich and famous in Italy, located about 30 kilometers from Naples. Currently, the lower part of Baia is submerged in the sea. It is believed that it was caused by the volcanic activity present in the place and also due to bradysism, which are slow movements of earth deformation, modifying the altitudes in a sensitive way. Underwater researchers and archaeologists have been organizing expeditions to discover what's left of the city. There are still beautiful buildings that can be seen in the underwater archaeological site. They are protected due to their high importance in the history of archaeological science. Since 1941, researchers have been paying enormous attention to the site, carrying out intense excavations, revealing submerged remains of thermal complexes, public and private baths, remains of entire villas, statues, and everyday objects scattered on the bottom of the Neapolitan Sea built by various Roman emperors, including Nero and Julius Caesar. Heracleion. Referred to as the Atlantis of Egypt, Heracleion was an Egyptian port city located 32 kilometers from Alexandria that is submerged, and it is not known for sure what sank the city. Built around the 12th century BC according to legends cited by ancient Greek historians. Heracleion was rediscovered in the 2000s by French archaeologist Frank Gaudio. Among the ruins discovered were ships, anchors, a treasure trove of gold coins, large statues, a huge temple to the god Amun-Jareb, small sarcophagi for the animals that were used as offerings, and a black granite boulder measuring over 2 meters high covered with hieroglyphs. Archaeologists believe it will take about 200 years for the city and its mysteries to be fully understood. Meanwhile, you can admire some of the artifacts unearthed at the Maritime Museum of Alexandria. Lion City. Located in China, the Lion City is considered the Chinese Atlantis. This city was submerged in 1959 when the artificial reservoir of Lake Qingdao was created to provide hydroelectric power to the rapidly growing city of Hangzhou. The Chinese Lion City had a population estimated at 290,000 inhabitants. Being founded around 1400 years ago and not rediscovered until 2002, when archaeologists found the first remains of the city. The city, some 40 meters below the surface of the water, is home to some incredibly well-preserved examples of architecture from the Ming and Qing dynasties that ruled the country between 1368 and 1912. Miraculously, many of the city's buildings and structures remain intact today. Diving into the water, you will be able to see the well-preserved remains of the city. Expect wide streets, majestic buildings, and ornate statues. To this day, the site is still being explored and studied by archaeologists and historians. For those interested, it is possible to visit the city by scheduling special dives. Port Royal. If you're a fan of pirates, you've certainly heard of the legendary Port Royal in Jamaica. During the 17th century, Port Royal served as the seat of British government in the country. However, most people only know of it today as a haven for pirates. At one point, Port Royal was a favorite spot among pirates and bandits and became known as the most evil city in the world. Sadly, an earthquake and tsunami in 1692 saw 2/3 of the city consumed by the Caribbean Sea. Although there were attempts to rebuild the city, a series of natural disasters hindered progress. Another earthquake in 1907 sealed the fate of this illustrious port city. Since this catastrophe, many divers have been discovering the harbor ruins in search of some wonders, and the underwater remains of the sunken city have been an absolute paradise for divers ever since. Yonaguni. In the year 1986, a Japanese diver named Kihachiro Aratake discovered underwater ruins near Yonaguni Island in Japan while diving to a depth of 25 meters below sea level. Over the years, after receiving visits from many scholars, the submerged ruins of Yonaguni remain shrouded in mysteries that scientists have not yet been able to come to terms with. In the region, there are pyramids over 30 meters high, unidentified hieroglyphs, sculptures, stairs, and stone roads. In addition to a huge plateau approximately 200 meters long, 140 meters wide, and 26 meters high. The city was supposedly sunk by an earthquake about 2,000 years ago, and currently, the site can be explored by diving or boating. Pavlopetri. Considered the oldest underwater city in history, Pavlopetri is located on the southern coast of Laconia, Greece. The city was submerged after a series of earthquakes that occurred there about 5,000 years ago. Its archaeological remains were discovered for the first time in 1967 by Nicholas Fleming. The following year, in 1968, archaeologists from the University of Cambridge, in the United Kingdom, went to the site and began several studies about it. Pavlopetri extends over at least 50,000 square meters and is the only underwater city in the world to keep its structure almost intact. Streets, courtyards, buildings, and tombs mark the view of those who observe it. In the latest surveys carried out at Pavlopetri, at least 15 large buildings and a cemetery that contains 60 stone graves were discovered, in addition to several fragments of ancient artifacts. Currently, Pavlopetri is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Dwarka. Dwarka is one of the holiest cities in ancient India. Considered a kingdom built by Lord Krishna, home to 700,000 palaces made of gold, silver, and precious stones, Dwarka supposedly disappeared after a huge tsunami about 10,000 years ago and was a myth until then, when in the year 2000 the National Institute of Technology Oceanic India discovered the ruins about 40 meters below the surface of the Gulf of Khumbat. After this, a number of ancient artifacts were unearthed, including pottery, sculpture, evidence of human structures, and bones. The city was also well planned, divided into 6 sectors which, in turn, were divided into residential and commercial areas. Since its discovery, local governments have put plans in motion to transform the ancient underwater city into a diving site and tourist attraction. Villa Epecuén. Villa Epecuén was an Argentine tourist village on the shores of Laguna Epecuén, until a heavy rain in the mid-1980s caused the lake to overflow. The city was under 4 meters of water and gradually became uninhabitable. In 1993, the water had risen 10 meters and the village was completely destroyed. Technically, Villa Epecuén is no longer fully underwater. Since 2009, the floods have receded, exposing an eerie post-apocalyptic landscape of houses, trees, car wrecks, half-submerged roads, skeletons of old hotels and buildings that look as if they will collapse at any moment. The streets are covered in mud and some of them are whitened due to the salt in the lake. Canopus. Located in Egypt near the city of Heracleion, the city of Canopus was subject to rising sea levels, earthquakes, tsunamis, and much of it appears to have succumbed to liquefaction sometime in the late 2nd century BC. The eastern suburbs of Canopus collapsed. Its remains are now submerged in the sea, with the western suburbs being buried under the modern coastal city of Abu Qir. Canopus still hides some relics and the sanctuaries of Serapis and Osiris.